Why, hello. Fancy meeting you here. Welcome to another episode of Speaking Through the Fog. So, I had built up tension until I got to the culmination of the plot, which was me going to field school and him going insane, and me basically telling him it's not okay and breaking up with him. So, after all that happened, I did my field school, had lots of fun, and flew back and didn't talk to him at first. And he didn't really call me at first. And then after about a week, I called him up just to see. I figured he'd probably cooled down a little bit and maybe we could be friends again, and asked him if he wanted to come over. And when he came over, he was contrite and said all the right things, oh, this summer has been really an eye-opener. I didn't really get to do much, and but I did get to think, and I realized, what I did was crazy, and I kind of talked to him about some of the stuff that had been bothering me, and he promised, of course, he would change, and I, of course, believed him, and I was in love with him and 16, so I took him back and was like, just don't be like that again. You went crazy, and I'm gonna have to leave sometimes, and we can't always be attached to the hip. That's not normal, and just normal healthy things to say in a relationship, I feel like. Well, from that point on, the relationship was kind of broken, like not broken so much as just like stilted. Like I was always kind of on one foot out the door in a way because I knew he could be crazy. But instead of making that, like making an effort to kind of show me that he had changed or whatever, he had gotten worse, and his fits were like an all the time thing, and he was always angry with me and always yelling at me and just completely just always accusing me of stuff. And he would say it was because he afterwards he'd be like, I'm sorry, I just am so scared of losing you again. And it was like, well, if you're so scared of losing me again, then quit acting like that. And every time I would try to break up with him, he'd freak out and tell me he was going to commit suicide. And I couldn't do that. Like if he had committed suicide at the time, I would have been so just I couldn't do that at all. Like if if I thought he had done it because of me, I would have felt like I killed him, kind of thing. So, and I tried to tell my friends about it, and they weren't really listening, and I couldn't tell my mom again, and so I just felt really alone in the whole thing, and kind of like I was in this perpetual like cycle of horror, just this like nightmare where I was with this guy that I obviously I was in love with, and he was good when we were good, but like he was horrible when it was horrible. And I couldn't break up with him because I felt like I had his life in my hands, kind of thing. And he knew that too. He knew that he could say that and it would instantly make me back off. So this cycle kept going over and over, and he was hurting himself more and more and started getting a little bit violent with me, not like so much hitting me, but like looking like he was going to, or just getting really up in my face. And I was just getting more and more like little, I would say, like taking it more because it was just so much easier just to, okay, it's fine, like if I just say everything's my fault. And then after a while it was like, okay, maybe it is my fault, and I wasn't talking as much to any of his guy friends. I would talk to this one guy that the 21-year-old I had mentioned earlier who got us beer or whatever. well, I was talking to him, but not over stuff like that. He was trying to get me to like actually break it off with him because he knew exactly how he was because he heard me talking or us talking one time when he, my boyfriend didn't know that he was around and heard him like freaking do his thing where he was like hitting his head against the wall and stuff and me freaking out, and he kind of pulled me aside and was like telling me like, no, this isn't normal, this isn't okay. And I'm like, well, I can't break up with him because he'll kill himself and I don't know what to do. And he kept trying to tell me, like, well, if he kills himself, then that's his thing. Like, you can't stay in this relationship. Like, it's killing you. And I'm like, well, I can't do it to him. Like, I just can't. Like, how am I supposed to? And then I broke down and told him kind of everything. And he was really like a good listener and everything. And so he was but he was like, I was telling him everything kind of in secret. And so he was like the only person I was really talking to. Everybody else I felt like didn't really know what was going on and didn't really like understand. And so I was kind of withdrawing from him, and that was kind of a bad thing in a way because that meant that he had a little bit more control over me, and everything was just kind of getting worse and worse, and I was just in this like perpetual like abuse cycle. It was stereotypical like psychology textbook abuse cycle, and I was so stuck in it I didn't know how to get out. And then the last night right before we like broke it off for good, he we had drove home and there was something that happened that he thought was my fault again, and he was yelling at me, and we were up in the room and I was like telling him I couldn't take it anymore and I just wanted to break up, and he was telling me he was gonna die and did I want him to die that bad, and I'm like, no, but that's he didn't have to kill himself, but we just couldn't stay together. And he wasn't wanting me to say any of that, so he kept just banging his head against my floor. Well, the only thing about that was my bedroom was on the second story and my parents' bedroom was like right underneath me. So when he was banging his head against the floor, it was making really loud banging noise on my parents' ceiling. So they went up to see my mom came up to see what was wrong, like what was this like constant banging noise. And when she comes in, she finds him hitting his head against the floor, and he's so crazy he doesn't even hear the door open. And then me, like in tears, just sobbing, just like heartbreaking sobs, just screaming at him to stop. And my mom comes in, and I'm like, uh-oh, like kind of like trying to get myself to stop crying. And she is like, what is going on? And he just like stops mid and is like you can tell he's caught dead to rights. And he's like, and she's like, grabs me by the arm and just like pulls me downstairs. And I'm so just like emotionally just out of it. Like, I'm not even fighting her, I'm just kind of following her. She pulls me into like the dining room, I think. And she's asking me what's going on. And I'm like so upset I can barely speak. I'm crying so hard. And I'm like telling her, like, I don't know, like, blah, blah, blah. He says it's my fault. It's not. I can't do it. I tried to break up with him. He won't let me, like he's gonna kill himself. I've seen the news, he's shown it to me, kind of thing. Like I can't let him kill himself. Like I love him too much, and like, but I can't do this anymore, and like, but I have to stay with him, and this is just not gonna have to be how it is, and I'm like so sorry. And I tried to get him to stop, and just like I don't even know what to say to her really, and just kind of just spitting it all out, and she's like, oh my God, how long has this been going on? You know what? No, we'll talk about it later. He's got to go. And I'm like, no, he can't. No, not when he's like this. He cannot go. He'll like drive himself off a cliff. Like, no, he can't go. And she's like, Miranda, he is like, you are, I've never seen you this upset. Like, this is awful. I mean, no, he can't do this to my daughter. He's got to get out. I'm like, no, 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 he can't. Like, no, I can't let you do that. No, I have to, I'll go up and tell him to leave. No, Miranda, you can't go up there and tell him to leave. If you do that, he's just going to continue to do what he's doing. And I'm like, well, no, no, who's going to tell him? And she's like, your dad. And I'm like, no, dad cannot tell him. Dad would wind up like, no, he'd get too mad. And if he gets too upset, he's just, I don't even know what he's going to do. And keep in mind, I'm like still crying. And she's like, well, I'll go up and tell him, but he's got to go and you're not going to be the one who says it alone. And I'm like, well, let me at least come up with him so he knows that I'm like not abandoning him or anything. So we both go upstairs and my mom basically looks at him and goes, what I saw up here is not acceptable. And you have my daughter so upset, like she is like physically ill, and this is not how you treat people, and I need you out of my house, and I don't want you to come back, and you're not allowed to see my daughter anymore. And he kind of like looks over at me and he goes, do you agree with this? And I'm like, I think so. Like, I was trying to break it off and I just don't think, it's okay. And he's like, okay. And he just walks out and I'm like freaking out. Like, and my mom, it takes my cell phone and I'm like, no, I've got to keep a hold of it in case he tries to kill himself. And she's like, no, he's not going to kill himself. And I'm like, yeah, he is. He always says that. He always says every time. And she goes, how many times has he said that? And I'm like, telling her. And she's like, well, if he said it that many times, he's not going to. And if he does, that's not your fault. That's his own dumb fault. It's not in your hands. If he does that, that's his decision. And I'm like, well, it still make me feel so bad. And she goes, Miranda, you can't do this. And she goes, if he dies, you can blame it on me because I am not letting this happen anymore. So I finally get my phone wrestled out of her hands because he had left a message on my voicemail and a little bit later. And on my voicemail he left, I'm going to swing on your prom night, which was coming up pretty soon, and basically saying he was going to hang himself on the night of my prom. And I just like look at my phone and just start crying again, and my mom takes my phone away from me. I didn't get it back for like, I believe, a week after that. And from then on it was just, kind of working on trying to get him out of my system and ignore him and not let the fact that I couldn't talk to him anymore bother me, and just realize that he was not something that I could do anymore, like be with, so it was really hard. That's not the last episode. There's one more which kind of talks about the aftershock of that. And then this little mini series will be done, and it was really long, so I'm sorry about that. So wait for a little bit more of Speaking Through the Fog.